Greetings, everyone. I am Angelo Robles. It's a pleasure to be live. I feel like it's been about a week or two. So great to see you all. I was going to say welcome to the summer, but officially, we're not quite there yet. But we're, what, 2 days away? So we're getting really close. It's been a very active last 2 weeks. I guess you could say the end of the spring for me. I'm very excited to do a live and one a bit differently than I normally do because although I think there's values to families and single family offices and what I'll be talking about today, this is one of the relatively rare times where my focus is really more on the advisor, the consultant, the GP, the fund manager. And actually hosting a meeting with single family offices this morning in New York, members of my SFO continuity, I mentioned what I'd be doing today, and they actually gave me some great feedback on broadly a bit of my presentation and gave me some ideas, kind of a bit of a preamble, which will be a little bit of a bonus that I'm going to give many of you shortly. So the timing is good. I'm glad you're all here, and I hope you're all having a great end to the spring and beginning of a great summer for you and your families. So the core topic today is going to be focused on unlock billion-dollar success without bureaucracy. And it absolutely, although I do think there are value to families and specifically single family offices from how they would like to interact with those that service them. Again, the focus is really going to be on attorneys, accountants, GPs, fund managers, anyone truly MFOs, anyone that is looking for a clientele and looking to service them. And I think there's never been a better time. But before we get to that, a little bit of some updates, news, and a little bit of context for this week as well. At least those that will hear this live. So today happens to be Tuesday. Tomorrow, meaning Wednesday, at 11 a.m. Eastern, on my social platforms, as well as those that were invited via my webinar function, I'm hosting probably what's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes, which probably means it'll be 40 to 60 minutes. I'm calling it Investment Trends of the $7 billion investor family office. Now, some of you are saying that's very specific, not 1 billion, not 5, not 10, but 7 billion. So again, really at heart, I think of myself as a researcher and a consultant globally to families and single family offices. And going on the real-time Forbes 100, do you know the net worth of the bottom of the barrel, number 400? Now, it does fluctuate because it's real time and it has broadly gone down a little bit in the last week, but it happens to be $7 billion. When I ask most people, specifically advisors, what that number they estimate to be, meaning number 400, they usually say somewhere from about 2 to 2.5 billion. So there's a very, very large disconnect, which again, I think henceforth is also opportunity. So tomorrow at 11 on my socials and those that were invited via webinar, and by the way, even today, feel free to interact and ask questions. I'll be doing a really interesting, which is a elongated program. And what spurred this was a couple of weeks ago, I got invited by Max Pog to be a part of his, where he has over 1,500 allocators digitally on Zoom. I think it begins approximately noontime Eastern on Thursday, the day after. And most of the presentations among people in the investment community are only 10 minutes, including me. So I was going to do more broadly investment trends of family offices, which is great. But my friend Ron Diamond and others are doing something similar. So I elected to be a little bit more narrow and focused. And more importantly, I reached out to 3 specific families, all multi-billion, one of them led by a non-bloodline CIO, and the others 2 wealth creators, as well as the families at the wonderful Lowe's Regency, New York, that literally this morning, through my private membership club, SFO Continuity, we hosted an incredible 5-person, let's call it breakfast roundtable. And They even added some more things. Now, some things I'll keep close to the vest. You really do need to be a member of what I've built or a consultative client to get some of the more deep dive in long form, I guess you could say, context and value. But one of the questions that we threw out there, and this does correlate to the core subject that we're going to talk about today, is with no negative repercussions. That doesn't mean you won't lose money, but you won't lose status of the family or lose a job if you're a non-bloodline executive. And leaning towards being aggressive, what would you do with $7 billion? Let's even assume a fair amount of that is relatively liquid. So we're being a little Pollyanna here, since usually that's not the case. And what could we do to double that money, which, by the way, not factoring in, fees and a combination of other factors, that's looking at about 14.4% to double it over 5 years. And yes, we even threw out the question, what could you do to 10x money in even a shorter amount of time? And as you could imagine, there were things that were very, very risque that were in there. Probably tomorrow I'll mention one or two of those, but I will do a deeper dive into basically 10 strategies that the families told me, and one or two were add-ons from this morning. And I'll do a little bit of a different twist to it Thursday if you're going to be a part of Mox Pog's program. So I do want to keep some things exclusive for what I'm doing there. Although it's only 10 minutes, I'm going to have a couple of golden nuggets, I guess you could sort of speak, to drop there. So with me, I've been in the family office community for many a decade. I'm extremely interested and active as an allocator. And when it comes to investing, man, those are things that I just fall in love with. I want to note the good and the bad, because it's not all rosy. And like I've said before, I do think too many things in the family office world are a little boring, a little vanilla, a little too down the middle. And I enjoy talking to people that are a little bit more thoughtful. And I guess I could go a little bit more risk-taking. So that begs a question, which will relate to the topic today. Relax, enjoy, we got time. The presentation, if I can call it that today, it probably is going to be all of about 10 or 12 minutes. So it's going to be short. This is all going to be additive to it and build up a little bit of what I'm doing tomorrow and Thursday. And to give you deeper context, if you're a family or an SFO, to be a part of my private club, which is all up on my site, angelorobles.com, meaning my SFO continuity or a consultative or other like-minded relationship. So those are interesting questions. What can you do to double your money? Well, the question you're first going to want to ask is, what's the timeline? If the timeline is 10, 15 years, well, of course, but then to be the bottom of the Forbes 400 then will probably also be double what that amount of money is. So how do you even exceed potentially in my 5-year span of 14.4%? Now, again, I know this is fairy tale. So how this is going to relate a little bit to reality and the importance of what we're talking about today is the question, is there a distinction between wealth creators who effectively run the capital in the family office and make decisions, those that are family members, let's broadly go with the word inheritors, and thirdly, non-bloodline, let's call it CIO? And the answer, to no surprise, per my research, not just with the 3 people specific for this project tomorrow or the 5 this morning, but really effectively many, many others that I have monthly conversations with, and those over 20 years that I've gotten to know, and they participate in some of the research and work that I do. Of course, the wealth creator is more likely to be more aggressive. So part of the challenge I have from the CIO perspective is the fact that Warren Buffett, rule number 1, don't lose money. The family is already rich. Rule number 2, remember rule number 1. There is nothing wrong with that theory. That is theoretically accurate. The family is already rich. But do you really understand what the underlying goals are and aspirations of the family members, specifically those that make decisions? And are you factoring in the impact of expenditures, of spend rate, of trust distributions, of a variety of factors around fees, around taxes, and of course, what is the real inflation for the super rich that are often living a more lavish lifestyle of things that are going up and up more in value? No, you definitely cannot trust the CPI. And henceforth, that relates to purchasing power. So do too many CIOs tend to play it too safe, but they have the talent and the capability of doing more? The answer is yes. And I do like to work with them in coordination with the family on that. But I do enjoy, man, there's nothing like working with the wealth creator themselves that could actively make decisions. What are some of the traits, for lack of a better word, that my research and others have shown relative to this type of audience? They do tend to be conscientious, meaning they're thorough and meticulous, yet they're also able to make fast decisions. On the other hand, as someone who probably is overly allocated in too many different things myself, we sometimes tend to fall in love with a variety of things. And sometimes we do need that person, even after our thesis is formed and we think we want to make a decision. And by the way, we can mitigate certain risks by limiting the allocation that we make to a given theme or sector, or specifically one off to a specific company. But nonetheless, is it good to have a sounding board? I want to have strong opinions for sure, but I kind of want to have them loosely held. As new information comes in, I may need to adapt my decision. Also, from an investing perspective, why am I going to want to move off 5% treasuries, AKA cash? What advantage, what VIG, what am I going to get relative to that risk or lack of liquidity? These are all decisions that need to be made. Now, we'll go into much more of this on a deeper level tomorrow, and a little bit of a different twist and more nuance during my 10 minutes, although I do look forward to that on Thursday. So on a little bit to the core topic today, unlocking billion-dollar success without bureaucracy. I don't know about you, but I enjoy the opportunity for freedoms. I believe in processes and systems a lot. A lot of the consultative work that I do with single family offices basically is around best practices, enhancing processes and systems in coordination with understanding your people, what needs to be done there, and a variety of different factors that intertwine within that, people, systems, and technology, to be more effective quantifiably, although parts of the family office community are simply how you feel, quantitative, especially outside of investing. So how can you build, depending on what kind of industry you're in, but let's say even an MFO, a billion or multi-billion dollar business, or legal, accounting, or service industry practice without bureaucracy and hierarchy? Now, part of that may meaning you being more independent, potentially after getting your feet wet and experience and mentorship, by becoming independent and being able to make decisions without an overly bureaucratic process or hierarchy. Although, again, having some measures to hedge against risk that you may make, and having ideas you could bounce off people and get honest feedback. You don't want them to kiss your ass. You want honest feedback from them. So how do you work more with the super rich billionaires and family offices? As I noted, the bottom of the barrel, wink, wink, number 400, Forbes 400 real time, is 7 billion. So the amount of great wealth that has amassed really since COVID has been more concentrated in the upper levels. Asset inflation effectively outside of 2022 has been very attractive for those that have access. So we're going to talk about a lot of those things more tomorrow. So from the way that I'm describing, and again, my own experience is 20 years, which basically came from nothing in the single family office community, the super rich and billionaires, to basically having that be my life for decades, knowing what it's like to cold call, knowing what it's like to effectively go to buildings and knock on doors. I get it. Trust me. You get paid for your ability to solve problems, effectively to sell outcomes. Ironically, that's one of the things I talk about in the single family office community. You have to effectively solve problems, and you have to procure positive future outcomes. Relationships in this community run everything for the super rich billionaires and family offices. You need to truly understand that. If you look at that as being simply a subset, which I guess it is, broadly, of marketing and sales. So I know many people in college that reach out to me, or universities that I speak to, what could I do to get involved in the family office community? Or more specifically, more asset management, Wall Street, quote unquote, hedge funds. Some of you are utterly so brilliant that perhaps the analytical role and that perspective is the right route to go. For many of you, let's be honest, the reality is it really is a sales role. It's your ability to drive AUM in that example or clientele. And how do you think you become a partner, your own Harvey Specter at a legal firm? I do love the show Suits. Or an accounting firm, or bring AUM in? Is it going to be your pure intellect? Your intellect can help. It can help solve problems. But really, a lot of it is going to be your emotional intelligence and your ability to bond and relate to people and know how to meet them. It's discipline and consistency. So yes, relationships in this community effectively run everything. Your ability to procure, your pure intellect, your capability to be top 1% from a technical perspective, fine. If that's what you think you need, won't matter if you're not exceptional at cultivating relationships with this audience. Genius lies in ignoring the unimportant. And I tell you from my own work, from interviewing Tony Robbins and many other prominent people, to working and consulting within many, many family offices, that is easier said than done. By nature, we tend to have distractions. How do we build processes and systems? How do we develop the right habits? And how do we have effectively a process, especially and perhaps even every day or every morning, depending on the situation? You're not just prioritizing. That's very important. It means you have to say no. Sometimes daily you need to reprioritize. Read Gary Keller's The One Thing. It's an incredible book. I recommend it to every single family office that I know. It's going to be valuable to you as well. Ignoring the unimportant to some degree relates to the Pareto Richard Koch's principles on 80-20. And again, you kind of know this already, but what many of you are lacking is to put it into practical use and the opportunity to be held accountable and to maybe get yelled at occasionally. I'm generally pretty good, although in a nice way, at those two things. Masters of the universe learn to sell, which effectively is solving problems. And they learn to build. Now, that would require a little bit of a longer conversation than the brief presentation today, but if you can do both, you will become unstoppable. Often the prize doesn't necessarily go to the fastest person. It goes to the person who slows down the least. There is a process that I go through, and it's a psychological one to some degree, and things that I've learned from many incredible people over the years and my own experience, that effectively people really only buy four things, and four things only, ever. I'll share what those are during other programs I'm doing upcoming. I want to keep today a little bit more high level, and the work that I'm specifically doing with those in the community. You already know what you know. I want to teach you what you don't know. It took me 20 years. I made a lot of mistakes. I really messed up. I've been humbled even this year and last year, decades into hopefully some level of stature, respect, and capability and capacity that I built up in the community. I am more than open about that, and I would like to hopefully share these with you. One of the questions I sometimes get, usually from those on the more younger side, is could I just go right into working with these kind of clientele? There's not an easy answer for that, but I could argue to some degree, why not? And if you aim for the stars and hit the moon, maybe initially you're working with $5 to $10 million AUM clientele or larger clientele from a legal, accounting, consultative, technological perspective than you first thought, because I got you thinking bigger. And then maybe you do work up that capability over time. The honest answer is, for the majority of you, I'm not going to say anything different for me, that most of what's offered effectively is a commodity. So this goes back a little bit about what I said earlier about selling and building. There's a very, very small percentage where their capability, let's stick with legal and accounting, is so damn good, so good. And I've seen them, I've recommended some families to them, and I've seen them in action. Their technical capability is wickedly impressive. That probably is about 1%. And don't worry, those are often not the highest earners. Is my conversation today to only focus on how you could make more money? No, but I'm not going to ignore that and say that's not something that you may strive to. And by the way, no matter what I say, I could have a list of testimonials like this. I could have a Forbes 10 relationship that I dealt with in their family office come on. No matter what I do, the vast majority of you may appreciate some of the free content that I provide. No matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter who backs up what I say, by the nature of people, you're just not going to move forward. That's just the way it is. I made a concerted effort, especially a couple of years ago, to start to spend more money to enhance what I call my capacity and my capability. And that was very, very important to me. But did I spend multiple tens and tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes yearly? And even then, I look back, it may not have been enough. And I have to learn that certain things need to be relearned, that there's a certain status quo bias and challenges that I had internally that I had to overcome. So I go back to, you already know what you know, get better at your competency. I'm a little bit not the biggest fan of the word confidence. I think fake it until you make it could work a little bit initially. Mental mindsets are very important, but it really can't be measured, where competency, at least to a degree, in certain industries can. So information is valuable only if it changes a state, effectively your mindset, and you elect to either double down off information on ideas that you have to strengthen it, your thesis, or allow you to change it, which is harder. Think of playing poker. It's not static. As cards change, as player dynamics, your interaction, conditions change sometimes every couple of seconds. That is why things, although they're different, like chess and poker, may not be a great correlation. They're really not to investing per se, but do they have some correlation to your ability to control your emotions, to process information? ERO, event plus response equals outcome. You only control effectively your response, or AKA what you think. I think those are all valuable principles. Now, this is kind of important. I just kind of mentioned it 2 minutes ago. The majority of advisors, consultants, professional service professionals, asset managers, fund managers, and me, we all have status quo bias. We are predisposed in favor of sticking to our current circumstances instead of taking action to pursue exceptionalism. The old adage of just be yourself is complete bullshit for 99% of us. Why don't we become the best version of ourselves, to hold ourselves internally to a higher standard? And often, yes, I've learned that does mean to have a level of coaching and consultative services to showcase our faults, to work and get better at them, enhance our strengths, and then put that within the dynamic of our internal frame and our capability in marketing and sales. Too many stay close to things that they think will make them safe. And single family offices, investors do this too. Conversely, read Taleb. That actually makes you fragile over time. There's a variety of things, but I do believe that certain people, I mean, obviously the GPLP structure is sort of a fund manager and how that works in 2 and 20. Yeah, those are people that could go on and become billionaires, certain of them. But many of you could do very, very well, easily, even still in your 20s, become a 7-figure earner, and very possibly, depending on equity and a variety of other strategies, depending on the industry, become an 8-figure earner. You could do very, very well. I know, I've met them. So taking a little bit of a step back, the family office industry, and no one knows exactly for sure, but the best research and guesstimates is it's probably about a $12 trillion industry, and definitely growing. As I said, the last person in the Forbes 400 is technically a little over 7 billion. You're important here. Your competition for that caliber of clientele is from a very small number of your peers. Hear that again. The majority of you, whether you're making 60,000, 100,000, 300,000, or even $1 million, you're probably relatively happy. You may claim you want to make more, but what actions, what are you learning? What are you implementing? What actions are you taking to actually do that? The vast majority of you, probably 95%, if not 97 to 98%, is going to be nothing. And I'm just giving you a stark reality. Maybe that's why I'm not liked in the community. uh, I've been in that as a multi-decade entrepreneur in the family office community for, again, for a long, long time. I had an exit from Family Office Association. I've been lucky and fortunate having great people around me. And probably the number one thing that you could do in terms of building an organization is a four-letter word. It begins with an H. It's hire. So having the right people and knowing how to balance, how to sometimes be top down and hold them accountable, but allow them, if they're good and they prove themselves, the capability for a level of freedoms. But that is a different discussion for a different time, and probably leads to the best practices work that I do with families and single family offices, really more than anything else. So in terms of what I'm describing for the advisory type community, I decided after I've done some one-off assignments from this, and yes, I'm pretty darn busy with Family Office TV, with my consulting to family offices, with my travels, and with my beloved building up to 30 founding members, like the breakfast meeting I hosted this morning, with amazing investors and family offices, and our learning and sharing at a very, very deep and intense peer-to-peer. But I'm a pretty high energy guy. I don't sleep as much as I should, and I just have a lot of capacity to do more work. I'm also very hungry for successes in what I do. I don't hide behind that. I don't claim to state that I'm the most generous or the best person in the world. I want to make more money. And I don't think that we should be ashamed of that, like we're almost counting down just to sound altruistic, so to speak, in the community. And yes, I do give money away. I do help people. And along with what I'm creating as a holding company in Wyoming, I'm in Connecticut now, but I spend a decent amount of time in Wyoming. I will do more and more from a philanthropic perspective. I believe generally in doing something without monthly contracts, month to month. I kind of need to prove myself every month. But am I going to be taking on at a very favorable pricing model people in the community that I believe in, that I believe will listen and want to be held accountable and want to be, to some degree, their hand held in terms of understanding the super rich billionaires and family offices where I've dedicated my life and my passions to for a long, long time. And I know that I could make a difference. So some of it involves weekly access to me, and that includes exclusive content that is not some of the free and or available content that I do in my socials, that I do in certain newsletter distributions and family office TV, which I love to do. I want to give back to the community, but there are certain things that I do need to keep proprietary. And I save that for those effectively, again, I'm running a business, those that are quote unquote paying me. Access to digital meetings on my constant research on insights to the billionaire, and sharing insight from an investing and also a life and legacy perspective of the families that I do research on and those that are part of my, broadly my network, but especially within something like SFO continuity. I do believe I understand the model after having hosted 400 plus events over 20 years, from soirees to dinners to lunches to this morning to breakfast, kind of how to be successful within that. I also understand the family office community and my peers a little more so back in my family office association days. I mean, I kind of know everyone, and I think everyone brings something for the most part good to the table, but some of the prices that they're charging and ways that you can negotiate and get better opportunity and have better successes at events and things like that, both your own and industry, I think many of you kind of honestly do a very, very bad job in. Some of you may be a little bit more limited in social media, but the opportunity in today's world, including things like Instagram Reels and TikTok, is very, very real. The opportunity of podcasting and more of a platform. And again, some of you in more banking and relationships like that are going to be a little bit more hand-tied on those kind of things. I understand. So it's not going to be quite as valuable for everyone. But has the industry tapped out, maximize the opportunities in that for those of you that are able to. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're probably averaging like a 2. So, no, they're not, which creates the opportunity for you. There's things that you'll learn. I think there's one thing that basically solves practically every problem. And you kind of all know what it is. And again, I'll save that and be a little bit of letting that one hang a little bit. But if you listen after I make an assessment and work with you and listen and understand what your goals and aspirations are, and I am definitely not a good fit for everyone. I'm a little quirky, I'm a little bit unique. I have a different perspective and different way of going about things. Do I want your business? Yes. Do I need it? Not necessarily. And I'm already doing things that I love. And at my more advanced age now, I want to make sure that I'm in relationships that, one, I'm enjoying to some degree. I'm getting an equal value back. Some of it is me learning and interacting in the vibrancy of you. And some of that simply is a monetary exchange. Again, relative for my time and experiences, making you the best version. If you're paying me and you're a part of what I'm doing, there is nothing that I hold back from you. Nothing. One of the questions I sometimes have received over the years relates a little bit to, like, how do I meet and how do I get access, especially if I'm younger, to, this is for a change starting to annoy me. And I know I'm Mr. Pocket Square, but the camera angle today is throwing that a little off. So yes, there are some services that are expensive that I have utilized that have allowed me to interact with multi-billionaires and top line well over 7 figures over the years. And I will share that with you. And no, you do not know who they are. And again, they are expensive, but it's the real deal. And then if you have an understanding of who our 10 family office is, 50, or if you have more capital, 100, 150, 200, how to develop a game plan in terms of working and reaching out to them. Is it a little bit of elephant hunting? It is. Does it need to require some sense of patience? Sure. But again, the profits you're making on it are not like a widget pennies. They're significant. There are, I would say, 2 practice management strategies that will definitely accelerate and probably show an impact within effectively 30 days. I think really important is that you need to be held accountable to what your goals are. I don't care if you're coming out of college. I don't care if you're relatively early in a career. I don't care if you're even really old. You're older than me. Do you want to have more success than you're having now? Do you want to live a certain lifestyle to pass on a legacy relative to your children? I've known people, not even the GPs worth billions, but others in the community that have done so well, they're literally passing on dynastic wealth and legacy. And no, I'm not totally defining that by money, but to ignore that that's not important is foolish. Some of the work that I do with families is around geopolitical risk. And one of the things that I'm sometimes asked and was recently asked by a younger person, again in college, I got to stop speaking at these universities. Maybe I am wasting too much time. What's an amount of money that buys freedom? I can't answer that for you. That's going to be depending on a variety of factors. But of course, that's a boring answer. So if I had to throw a number at you, it's probably, and probably fairly liquid, probably about 30 million plus. You have the opportunity to live where you want to live for the most part, to have optionality in passports, different relationships in business and banking around the world, and have a level of freedoms relative to what you're doing. I think a lot of it in building a legacy is owning and controlling a private business. You don't necessarily have to be the founder of it. That's another strategy to grow in kind of the service business as well, but that may take some capital or some sweat equity in terms of buying an existing business, one that is profitable but a little dated. And you have the opportunity of raising prices, enhancing services, and being much, much better in social media and other marketing. As I'm looking at cattle ranches and RV parks, mainly more on the RV park side, these are inefficiencies that I'm seeing in that community that I'm looking at from a little bit of a quasi purchase and roll up strategy through a holding company. The opposite of greatness is contentment. You, I know I'm going to hear flack for this, but when you're content, you settle for the status quo. You're never really staying still because others are probably kicking your ass that you didn't see coming. So you're really slowly going downhill. Like that's unacceptable. If that's acceptable to you, then I might even be a little jealous of you. I think that's awesome. But again, that's probably not an example where I'm going to be a great fit. I want you to be incredible. Uh, I want you to blow by, whatever I'm making and become part of really, truly the top 1% in your industry and in terms of what you do. And a lot of that, you're solving problems for literally the super rich. It simply pays better. It's a better utilization of your time. You have to understand how to reach that market, understand some of the psychology and traits behind it, how you could provide added value above and beyond to that community, and then how effectively you start to really get quote unquote paid for it. You become most successful at what you do, often by applying leverage to what generates the most success. But do you understand quantifiably what is those factors? That relates a little bit to the 80-20 we spoke about earlier. That relates a little bit to Gary Keller, the one thing to reprioritize and often daily, and really understanding what you need to focus on and not be distracted. Part of genius is, again, focusing on what is literally most important, not looking because you don't want to make that extra phone call. You don't want to cold call. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. So you look at reasons to get distracted. That's not acceptable. And I understand without mentorship and coaching, that likely is going to happen to some degree to probably 99% of us. I think you're probably one decision away from the potential for exceptional success. So this is an opportunity to maybe look at me as being a family office strategist and accountability partner for you. Now, how much capacity, since for now, this is more one-on-one work, not within a small group, but maybe that will evolve a year or two from now. But that opportunity means, given my activities and all else that I do, I kind of want to probably start off with just a couple of these. You're going to get my one-on-one attention and the opportunity, again, hopefully for me in short order. I said short order to make an impact. And there's no contractual agreement. I take pride in what I do. I think I'm damn good in what I do. And I think there's very, 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 very few people in the opaque industry of billionaires and family offices that have my knowledge and my experiences. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to be buried in that white belt. I want to have the beginner's mindset, and I want to have my ideas challenged. And I'm more than open to that. I'm wrong and I need to change. And I've done more than enough of that, whether I liked it or not, in the last year or two. So I have been humbled. Is it important to have the so-called that you can't measure confidence, which really is competence? Some would call it ego and arrogance. It's a little bit of a fine line, but you cannot be humble unless you have the capacity to be that lion, to be a little bit so-called arrogant and full of so-called, again, it can't really be measured, but confidence. But you know what I mean. It's easy for the meek to be humble, just like the old adage is, well, I could phrase it several different ways. Why don't I save that for more off camera? You're dealing with me one-on-one. You're going to get hit hard by all these things that I don't need to worry about being a little bit politically correct, like even I have to be to some degree in a more public platform like this. So in concluding, as usual, I probably went a notch longer than I thought, but I love what I do and I'm impassioned by it. Again, tomorrow, if you're live at 11 a.m. Eastern, meaning Wednesday, I will be doing kind of that overview of investment trends of the $7 billion investor And I'll probably even drop from this morning one of the 10X ideas. And by the way, one of the people that was at my SFO continuity meeting, who's a member as a family principal at a steakhouse we did in New York 2 weeks ago, they had, in case you think that doubling in 5 years or 10X is, oh, that's just utterly ridiculous. I don't know. Like, who makes up parts of my membership in SFO continuity? So if you're a family or SFO executive only, maybe some exceptions for a real CIO and a true old school intimate MFO, someone who's invested in over 900 private companies, someone who's been public in my interviews, who's a founder of Harvard Management Company, and someone, the person I referenced a minute ago, that had an above 300x, you heard that right, on a 7-figure investment, had above a 300x return. And it was something relative to AI and tech. I may have him on if he's willing more publicly, but among my members in SFO continuity, they meet and interact with people like that. There was an idea, actually, too, that came out of the breakfast meeting this morning that I would define as definitely ones that I'm going to explore further on 10X opportunities over a couple of years. So, and these are all things, even from an advisory and a consultative relationship, that you'll have an opportunity to understand some of the research and outputs that I'm doing that help you do a better job in what you do. And there might even be ideas as you develop capital and investment money that could be valuable to you from that perspective as well. So those of you, again, on more of the family or SFO side, really go to angelorobles.com, have an opportunity to look at what I do at SFO continuity. Many of you know how to follow me on Family Office TV. I technically have 2 YouTube platforms, a larger one at Family Office and my more intimate but looking to grow at Family Office TV. And yeah, the consultative page on angelorobles.com is really not that great. It needs to be worked on. I'm working on my site. It's a little bit more focused to some of the consultative work that I do with families. So this is really a special exclusive opportunity that as of now is not really on my angelorobles.com or nothing. And it's very nominal in terms of the pricing. And it's okay. We can have a conversation. Maybe you're not a good fit for me. I'm not a good fit for you. And I would understand. That doesn't mean that we're not friends, that you don't consider me someone who wants to provide or doesn't want to provide value to you and help within broadly a community perspective. I absolutely do. Which is why, as one person mentioned to me, actually one of my SFO members, SFO continuity members as a family principal, that feels that I give away too much relative for free. And that kind of made them a little bit annoyed. But I promise there's things that they only get, and the face-to-face interaction with fellow peers. I used to think, when I had my transition, selling my interest to Family Office Association into more of what I'm doing now, that was overrated, that it was only from afar digital and best practices that mattered, and that in-person was effectively dead. And yet another time, among many, that I was proven completely wrong. So had a little bit of a hard head, but I listened. And now with my members, they're, God forbid, but they're active seeing me, especially in New York in the spring and summer, and Palm Beach in the winter and fall, effectively once to twice a month if they want to. But why would they want to? Well, it's not me. It's the peer-to-peer network. And by the way, from this consultative relationship, which is more digital and phone calls, that doesn't mean that on some one-off basis, I may not be open, depending on the situation, to in-person. I could be open to flying out and doing a deep immersive 1, 2, or 3 days in your location. I like to travel, and sometimes that's kind of good for me, and you get a little bit more extra oomph and creativity because you're really going to be my only focus. And because y'all know I do love Jackson Hole, Wyoming so much, of course, I do have to do one kind of private advisor consultative retreat at the Four Seasons in Jackson Hole, where we just dig deep for a day and a half, 2 days, have some fun. Of course, I need a drink or two, and I do have to smoke. I don't have one where I could grab it now. And another reason I get in trouble on LinkedIn, God forbid I show one of my cigars or I light one up. Oh, how dare me. I'm an imperfect person. I guess I do have some bad habits, but I love what I do. I appreciate all of you that have enjoyed my content. Whether you pay me or not, I hope you enjoy some of the hopefully knowledge bombs that I could occasionally, I'd like to do it more often, but I could drop. And a reminder, if you're live tomorrow at 11 on my socials, or if you got the private webinar invite, and look up Max Pog, P-O-G, and what he's doing, LinkedIn or Google, I guess you could look him up, what he's doing on Thursday. And I look forward to keeping me to 10 minutes is going to be very, very, very hard. But I promise it will be unique. I will make it happen. I do look forward to it. And I do look for some of you, again, on the more advisory front, to look at me as potentially being a tremendous resource to you. I look to work with a couple of you. Effectively, you all know how to reach me. Email is angelo@angelorobles.com. Website, although again, terrible now on the consultative side, what I'm listing, but angelorobles.com, and even DMs on LinkedIn and all that is really good. It is the summer. If you're watching this on a recording, whatever, a week, a month, a year down the road, I'm still going to be here. My pricing may change, so there's opportunity and value to being a founder to come in early. And by the way, do not think for a second that I'm taking lots of time off in the summer. Last summer, yeah, it was my transition from FOA. I needed the break. I am busy. In June, we're not even close to, we're not close to finished. I've done 7 in-person events in New York, 7 so far in June. I got things coming up in July. I got things, hopefully Greenwich Polo and other things coming up in August. I look forward to a surprise trip to LA. I do want to get back to being more active on the West Coast. Back 2020, 21, 22, and even parts of 23, I've probably been to LA and San Francisco like 30 plus times. I have a good network out there. I actually have some interesting thoughts on CRE, commercial real estate, that came up this morning with the families on investing, including in places like San Francisco, where it might be possible, even though it sounds difficult, to make really good money. It depends on the price and terms. So these are all things that I likely will touch on a little bit more tomorrow. Hard for me to do things without getting into a deep dive in investing, because I just love that discussion so much. And more importantly, I love to ask people so much more talented and wealthier than me what the hell they're doing, what their secret sauce is. After I get to know them socially with a drink and cigar, they open up a lot more than initially, as they may know me as someone who, for some of my interviews with Adam Robinson and Ram Alawalia and Jolene Caruso and so many others, does seem to ask about 50 to 60 questions too. And sometimes you got to get them to loosen up a little bit. So again, you all know how to reach me. I'm incredibly active this summer, even though I know we're not technically the summer yet, but you get it. Come on, after Memorial Day, it's kind of the summer. I wish nothing but the best for you and your family, your business interest. Consider me a friend in the community, and hopefully interactive, even if it's digitally, this week. And you all know how, I think, to reach out to me. I don't see any specific questions that came in. So on that note, I think I'm about to change and jump in the pool and be refreshed for the rest of the week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.